I never thought I'd become the kind of father who'd have to teach his own child a lesson about decency. Not after everything I'd sacrificed. Not after the life I'd built for her. But sometimes, life forces your hand. My name is Robert Mitchell. At 63, I've spent 42 years working as a general contractor in Springfield, Massachusetts. I built my business from nothing, starting with just a second-hand pickup truck and a box of tools my father left me when he passed. Those early years were lean. My wife Sarah and I lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, saving every penny we could. When our daughter Melissa was born, I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week, determined to give her everything I never had growing up. Sarah was my rock through it all. She managed our finances, raised Melissa while I worked, and never complained about the modest life we lived. "We're building something together, Robert," she'd say. "Something that will last." And for 35 years of marriage, that's exactly what we did. We built a life. A good one. Our small construction company grew steadily. By the time Melissa was ready for college, we owned a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs, had a healthy retirement account, and could afford to send her to Northwestern University without her taking on a cent of debt. I remember the day we dropped her off at college. Sarah cried the whole drive home. I pretended not to, but I pulled over twice because my eyes were too blurry to see the road. Melissa graduated with honors and moved to Boston to work for a marketing firm. That's where she met Daniel. He came from money, old New England money. His family owned several commercial properties downtown, and Daniel managed them. He drove a Tesla, wore tailored suits, and had the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about paying bills. I didn't dislike him, but I didn't fully trust him either. There was something calculated about his charm. When they got engaged after dating for just 8 months, Sarah voiced concerns. "Don't you think it's a bit quick?" she asked Melissa during one of our Sunday dinner calls. But Melissa was 26 and in love. "When you know," she told us. We paid for most of the wedding, of course. Daniel's parents contributed, but somehow the bulk of the expenses fell to us. Sarah and I dipped into our retirement savings without complaint. It was our only daughter's wedding, after all. The ceremony was at the Four Seasons, Boston, far more extravagant than anything Sarah and I would have chosen. But seeing Melissa's face that day made every penny worth it. Sarah never got to see them buy their first home. The cancer took her quickly, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Pancreatic. By the time they found it, it had already spread everywhere. I spent every moment I could by her side, holding her hand as she grew thinner and weaker. Melissa visited when she could, but Boston was a 2-hour drive, and she was busy with her career and new marriage. On Sarah's last night, as I sat beside her hospital bed, she squeezed my hand weakly. "Promise me you'll look after yourself, Robert," she whispered, "and be there for Melissa. She'll need you even if she doesn't know it yet," I promised, and I meant it. After the funeral, the house felt unbearably empty. Every room held memories of Sarah, her reading glasses on the bedside table, her gardening gloves in the mudroom, her favorite mug in the kitchen cabinet. For months, I barely functioned. I'd go to work, come home, and sit in my recliner staring at the TV without really seeing it. I lost 20 pounds without noticing. It was Melissa who finally shook me out of it. She and Daniel came for a weekend visit about 4 months after Sarah passed. "Dad, you can't live like this," she said, looking around at the unwashed dishes and piled-up mail. "Mom would hate seeing you this way." She was right, of course. So I started putting myself back together. I hired a cleaning service to come twice a month. I joined a grief support group at the local community center. I even started having dinner once a week with my foreman, Frank, and his wife. Slowly, I found a new normal. Around that time, my doctor found some irregularities during my annual physical. My blood pressure was through the roof, and there were concerns about my heart. After a battery of tests, they scheduled me for a triple bypass. The news hit me hard. Without Sarah, I felt adrift facing something so serious. When I called Melissa to tell her, she sounded genuinely concerned. "Oh my God, Dad. That's major surgery. Do you want us to come down?" No, I said, not wanting to impose. "The surgery is scheduled for next Thursday. They say I'll be in the hospital for about 5 days afterward. Maybe you could visit once I'm back home?" "Of course," she promised. "We'll be there. Just focus on getting through the surgery and we'll take care of everything else." Her words comforted me more than she could know. In the days leading up to the surgery, I put my affairs in order, just in case. I updated my will, organized all my financial information, and made sure everything was easily accessible. Sarah and I had always been transparent with Melissa about our finances. She knew about the life insurance policy that had paid out after her mother's death, the retirement accounts, and the value of the house and business. We believed in preparing her to handle these matters someday. The morning of the surgery, I felt surprisingly calm. Frank drove me to the hospital at 5 a.m. "Don't worry about anything, boss," he assured me. "I've got the business covered. You just focus on getting better." The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took hold was thinking of Sarah, wondering if I might see her soon. I didn't, as it turned out. The surgery was successful, though the recovery was brutal. I woke up in the ICU with tubes everywhere and pain like I'd never experienced. The doctors were pleased with how things had gone, but warned me that the next few days would be difficult. That first day was a blur of pain medication and half-consciousness. By the second day, I was more lucid, though still heavily medicated. That's when I first tried calling Melissa. The phone rang until it went to voicemail. "Hi honey, it's Dad. Surgery went well, but I'm pretty wiped out. Just wanted to let you know I'm okay. Love you." I didn't think much of it. She was busy with work and I'd left a message. But when I tried again that evening and the next morning with no response, I started to worry. I sent a text. "Melissa, please call when you can. Everything's fine, but would love to hear your voice." Nothing. By the third day, concern had turned to hurt. I'd had major heart surgery, and my only child couldn't be bothered to return my calls. The nurses noticed my distress. One of them, a kind woman named Rita, who reminded me a bit of Sarah, sat with me during her break. "Family can be complicated," she said gently. "Try not to work yourself up. It's not good for your recovery." I nodded, but the hurt persisted. On the fourth day, Frank came to visit, bringing a card signed by everyone at the company. When I mentioned that I hadn't heard from Melissa, his expression darkened slightly. "You want me to try reaching her?" he offered. "No," I said, feeling a strange mix of pride and sadness. "If she's too busy to call her father after heart surgery, that's her choice." On the fifth day, they discharged me. Frank and his wife, Janet, had prepared the downstairs guest room in my house, so I wouldn't have to navigate the stairs. They stocked the fridge with easy meals and set up a schedule with some of the guys from work to check on me daily. I was touched by their kindness. That evening, as I sat in my recliner trying to find a position that didn't hurt, my doorbell rang. Frank had left just an hour earlier, so I wasn't expecting anyone. With considerable effort, I made my way to the door. There stood Melissa and Daniel, arms full of gift bags and flowers. "Surprise!" Melissa exclaimed, her smile bright. "We thought we'd come stay for a few days to help you recover." I stood there, momentarily speechless. After 5 days of silence, they show up unannounced at my door. "Dad," Melissa's smile faltered. "Aren't you going to invite us in?" I stepped aside, letting them enter. Daniel set their overnight bags in the foyer while Melissa bustled into the kitchen with the flowers. "I need to find a vase," she called over her shoulder. "These are from that fancy florist in Boston you like." I followed slowly, each step a reminder of my recently invaded chest. "I called you," I said quietly when I reached the kitchen doorway. "Several times. I left messages." Melissa turned, her expression a mix of guilt and dismissal. "Oh, I know, I'm so sorry. It's been absolutely crazy at work. This huge client project came up, and then Daniel had that charity gala for his family's foundation." She trailed off, arranging the flowers. "But we're here now, and we've taken a whole week off to stay with you." Daniel appeared behind me. "Robert, you're looking well, all things considered. Those hospital gowns never do anyone any favors, huh?" He laughed at his own joke. Something felt off. Their timing, their sudden appearance, the forced cheerfulness. But I was tired and in pain, so I let it go for the moment. "I appreciate you coming," I said, "though a heads-up would have been nice." "We wanted to surprise you," Melissa insisted, coming over to give me a gentle hug. "Now you should be resting. Go sit down and I'll make some tea." Over the next couple of days, I observed them closely. They were attentive enough. Melissa cooked simple meals, Daniel helped me to and from the bathroom when needed. But there was an underlying tension, a sense that they were waiting for something. They exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Several times, I caught them whispering together, only to abruptly change the subject when I entered the room. On their third evening there, I pretended to go to bed early. Instead, I sat in the darkness of my room, door slightly ajar, listening. At first, there was just the sound of them cleaning up in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, mundane conversation about what show to watch. Then, as they settled in the living room, their voices grew more serious. "We need to bring it up soon," Daniel said, his voice low but clear enough to carry. "We can't stay the whole week." "I know," Melissa sighed. "But he just had surgery. It seems heartless." "The timing isn't ideal," Daniel agreed, "but the opportunity won't wait. If we don't move on this property now, someone else will. And we need the money from your dad to make it happen." My heart, recently repaired, seemed to skip a beat. "Money? What money?" "It's not like we're asking for charity," Melissa continued. "It's an investment. The returns will be amazing. And honestly, what's he doing with all that money just sitting there? Mom's life insurance, his retirement accounts, the equity in this house. It's just gathering dust." "Exactly." Daniel's voice took on the smooth, practiced tone I recognized from his business dealings. "Your dad worked hard for that money, and now it can work for all of us. A 3-unit building in Cambridge, fully renovated. It's a gold mine. And at 20% down, we'd only need about $240,000 from him." I felt physically ill. My daughter and her husband had ignored my calls after major surgery, then shown up not out of concern, but because they wanted nearly $250,000 from me. The money I'd spent decades building, saving, sacrificing for. The future security I'd created with Sarah. "Let's ask him tomorrow," Melissa decided. "After breakfast, when he's had his medication, he's always more agreeable then." I barely slept that night. The pain in my chest seemed to have taken on a new dimension, physical and emotional now. By morning, I'd made a decision. I would hear them out, see exactly how far they would go with this scheme. As predicted, after breakfast and my morning pain medication, they sat me down in the living room. Melissa perched on the ottoman in front of me, taking my hands in hers. Daniel stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder, the picture of supportive husband. "Dad," she began, her voice gentle as if speaking to a child, "we want to talk to you about an amazing opportunity." For the next 20 minutes, they laid out their proposal. A small luxury apartment building in Cambridge, near Harvard Square. 3 units, each currently renting for over $4,000 per month. The property was listed at $1.2 million, and they needed $240,000 for the down payment. They'd already been pre-approved for the mortgage, contingent on having the down payment in hand. "The beauty of it," Daniel explained, leaning forward eagerly, "is that it's basically free money. The rental income more than covers the mortgage and expenses, and the property will only appreciate. In 5 years, we could easily sell it for 1.5, maybe even 2 million. And we'd split the profits with you," Melissa added quickly. "It's a family investment, the kind of legacy Mom would have wanted us to build together." The mention of Sarah made my blood boil, but I kept my expression neutral. "And you need the full $240,000 from me?" I asked calmly. They exchanged a quick glance. "Well," Daniel said, "we've got about $30,000 we can put toward it, but the rest would need to come from you. It's a lot, we know, but think of it as moving some of your money from low-interest accounts into a high-return investment." I nodded slowly, as if considering. "Where exactly is this building?" Daniel pulled out his phone, showing me photos of a handsome brick building with bay windows. "Kirkland Street, right near Harvard Law, prime location." I recognized the building immediately. It had been featured in the local real estate listings. I still browsed occasionally, thinking about downsizing. But I distinctly remembered it being listed at $1.5 million, not $1.2 million. "Can I see the listing?" I asked, another glance between them. "It's actually an off-market deal," Daniel explained smoothly. "Through connections in my family's real estate circle, that's why it's such a good price." I'd heard enough. "I'll think about it," I said, feigning fatigue. "I need to rest now." "Of course, Dad," Melissa said, patting my knee as she stood. "Take all the time you need, we're here all week." But they weren't. That afternoon, Daniel got a work emergency call. By evening, they were packing to return to Boston. "I'm so sorry, Dad," Melissa said, looking genuinely torn. "Daniel has to handle this situation, and I should go with him. But we've arranged for a home health aide to come by daily, and we'll be back next weekend." I waved off their apologies. "Don't worry about me. Frank and Janet check in regularly." You two take care of business." After they left, I sat in the quiet house, my mind racing despite the pain medication. Something wasn't right about their investment proposal, beyond the obvious exploitation of asking your recovering father for $240,000. The next morning, I called Frank. "I need a favor," I told him. "Can you drive me to my attorney's office tomorrow? There's something I need to discuss with him." "Sure, boss, but are you sure you're up for that? You're barely a week post-surgery." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "It's important." My attorney, Richard Goldstein, had handled my affairs for over 20 years. He'd done our wills, managed the transfer of Sarah's assets after her death, and helped set up the ownership structure of my business. I trusted him completely. When Frank wheeled me into his office the next day, Richard was visibly concerned about my condition. "Robert, you should be at home recovering. Whatever this is could have waited, or I could have come to you." "I appreciate that, Richard, but I needed to see you in person, and I didn't want any chance of this conversation being overheard." For the next hour, I laid out everything: Melissa and Daniel's absence after my surgery, their sudden appearance, the overheard conversation, and the details of their investment proposal. As I spoke, Richard took careful notes, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Let me see if I understand correctly," he said when I finished. "They claim there's an off-market property available for $1.2 million when similar properties in that area are listing for much more. They need $240,000 from you for the down payment, claiming they only have $30,000 of their own to contribute. And they're promising to split future profits with you, but have presented no actual documentation or partnership agreement." "That's right," I confirmed. Richard removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Robert, I hate to say this, but it sounds like they're either being scammed themselves or they're attempting to scam you." "That's what I feared," I said, the words painful to speak aloud. "But I need to know for sure. Can you help me investigate this property deal?" "Of course. I have contacts in Cambridge real estate. I can make some discreet inquiries." "But Robert," he leaned forward, his expression grave, "are you prepared for what we might find? This is your daughter we're talking about." I thought about Sarah, about the values we'd tried to instill in Melissa, about the sacrifices we'd made. "I need the truth, Richard, whatever it is." Over the next few days, while I focused on my physical recovery, Richard conducted his investigation. Frank continued to check on me daily, bringing meals prepared by Janet and updates from the business. I didn't tell him what I suspected about Melissa and Daniel. Some shame was too private to share, even with a friend as loyal as Frank. A week after our meeting, Richard called. "Can we meet again? I have information you should see in person." This time, he came to my house, bringing a folder of documents. We sat at my kitchen table as he laid them out one by one. "First," he began, "the property on Kirkland Street. It is indeed for sale, but the asking price is $1.6 million, not $1.2 million. It's a legitimate listing with Coldwell Banker, not an off-market deal." He showed me the listing, complete with the same photos Daniel had shown me on his phone. The knot in my stomach tightened. Second, I had my investigator look into Daniel and Melissa's finances. He slid over bank statements and credit reports. They're carrying significant debt, about $95,000 in credit cards between them, a $42,000 car loan for the Tesla, and they've maxed out a home equity line of credit on their condo to the tune of $120,000. I stared at the numbers, trying to make sense of them. Melissa made good money in marketing, and Daniel supposedly had his family's wealth behind him. How could they be this overextended? "There's more," Richard continued reluctantly. "The family foundation Daniel mentioned. It doesn't exist, at least not as a registered charitable organization. And the family properties downtown? His parents did own several commercial buildings, but they sold them all 3 years ago after running into financial difficulties. They now live in a retirement community in Florida, having significantly downsized." My head was spinning. "So everything he's told us about his family's wealth is a lie?" "It appears so," Richard confirmed gently. "And based on these financials, they're living well beyond their means. The credit card statements show luxury purchases, high-end restaurants, expensive vacations, all while they've been drawing down their savings and accumulating debt." I sat back, feeling the surgical incision on my chest pull slightly. And now they want $240,000 from me. Yes, and given what we've uncovered, I doubt very much that money would go toward any legitimate investment property. I closed my eyes briefly, thinking of Sarah. What would she advise me to do? She'd always believed in giving people second chances, in handling family matters with grace. But she'd also believed in honesty above all else. What are my options, Richard? He outlined several approaches, confronting them directly, setting conditions for any financial assistance, or simply refusing outright. None felt right to me. I need time to think, I told him. They're supposedly coming this weekend. I'll see what they say, how far they're willing to go with this deception. Richard looked concerned. Robert, you're still recovering. Are you sure you want to deal with this right now? No, I admitted. But sometimes timing isn't our choice. After he left, I sat alone in the house that Sarah and I had built our life in, surrounded by memories of happier times. Photos of Melissa's childhood covered one wall in the hallway, her first bike ride, school plays, soccer games, graduation. When had things gone so wrong? When had our daughter decided that lying to her father to get his money was acceptable? The weekend arrived, and with it, Melissa and Daniel. They brought more flowers, a gourmet food basket, and renewed energy for their investment opportunity. We've been doing more research, Daniel announced over dinner. The numbers look even better than we thought. The current tenants are all on 2-year leases, so the income is guaranteed. I nodded, picking at the meal Melissa had prepared. And you're sure about the purchase price? $1.2 million seems low for Cambridge. A flicker of something, concern, guilt, crossed Daniel's face before his smooth mask returned. Like I said, it's an off-market deal. The owner needs to sell quickly due to some tax issues. I murmured. And you said you have $30,000 to contribute? Yes, Melissa jumped in. We've been saving. That's impressive, I said casually, especially with the Tesla payment and those credit card bills. Silence fell abruptly. Melissa's fork clattered against her plate. What credit card bills? She asked, her voice suddenly tight. I met her eyes directly. The $95,000 in credit card debt between you, plus the home equity line maxed out at $120,000. That's a lot of debt for a young couple with good jobs. Daniel's face had gone pale. Robert, I don't know where you're getting this information. The same place I learned that the Kirkland Street property is actually listed at $1.6 million, not $1.2 million. I interrupted, my voice still calm. And that your family sold their commercial properties years ago, and that there is no family foundation hosting charity galas. The silence that followed was deafening. Melissa's eyes filled with tears, while Daniel seemed frozen in place. Dad, Melissa finally whispered, we can explain. I'm listening, I said, folding my hands on the table. What followed was a tangled web of excuses, half-truths, and blame-shifting. Daniel's family had indeed lost most of their wealth, but he'd been too ashamed to tell Melissa at first. By the time she learned the truth, they were already living a lifestyle they couldn't afford. The debt snowballed. They'd tried to keep up appearances, believing that opportunities would come if they looked successful enough. The investment property is real, Daniel insisted. Yes, the asking price is higher than I said, but I was going to negotiate it down. And we do need the money, not just for this investment, but to clear some of our debt. All of your debt, you mean? I corrected him. The $240,000 would conveniently cover everything you owe, with a little left over. Melissa was openly crying now. We were desperate, Dad. We're drowning. Daniel's parents can't help. They barely have enough for themselves now. My job is on shaky ground after the last client left. We didn't know what else to do. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and carefully applied makeup, I saw fear. And for a moment, I saw the little girl who used to climb into my lap after scraping her knee, looking to me to make everything better. So you decided to lie to me, I said quietly. To ignore my calls after heart surgery, then show up wanting nearly $250,000. Money your mother and I spent decades saving. Money meant to secure my retirement and eventually help you after I'm gone, not to bail you out of irresponsible spending in your 30s. I'm sorry, she whispered, mascara running down her cheeks. We were wrong. So wrong, Daniel reached for her hand across the table. For once, his confident facade had completely crumbled. We've made terrible mistakes, Robert, but please, we're family. We need help. I stood up slowly, my chest still sore from the surgery. You two should leave now, I need time to think. Dad, please, Melissa began, but I held up my hand. Not now, Melissa, go home. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. After they left, the house felt emptier than ever. I sat in Sarah's favorite chair in the living room, wishing desperately that she were here to advise me. What would be the right thing to do? Enable their behavior by bailing them out? Cut them off completely? Something in between? I spent the next week in deep thought, dividing my time between physical recovery and moral deliberation. I called Richard several times to discuss options and even spoke with Pastor Jim from our church without sharing the specific details. Finally, I reached a decision. I called Melissa and asked her and Daniel to come to the house the following Saturday. I also asked Richard to be present. When they arrived, looking nervous but hopeful, I had them sit at the dining room table where Richard had already laid out several documents. I've thought long and hard about this situation, I began, about what your mother would want me to do, about what's best for all of us in the long run. Melissa nodded anxiously, while Daniel kept his eyes on the papers on the table. I'm not giving you $240,000, I stated plainly. Their faces fell in unison. But I am offering you an opportunity to get your finances in order and rebuild trust with me. Richard took over, explaining the documents before them. This is a proposed financial rehabilitation plan. Mr. Mitchell is willing to pay off $50,000 of your highest interest debt immediately. The remaining debt will be your responsibility to address through a structured payment plan, which I'll help you create. Additionally, he's offering to pay for financial counseling sessions for both of you. Daniel looked disappointed but nodded slowly. Melissa seemed more emotional, tears gathering in her eyes again. There are conditions, I continued. First, complete transparency going forward. I want monthly updates on your finances until all debt is paid off. Second, you'll both meet with a financial advisor of my choosing twice a month for the next year. Third, you'll sell the Tesla and any other luxury items that are contributing to your financial strain. Dad, Melissa began, but Daniel squeezed her hand, silencing her. Those terms are more than fair, he said, surprising me with his sincerity. More than we deserve after what we tried to do. There's one more thing, I said, my voice softening slightly as I looked at my daughter. Your mother and I raised you with values, Melissa. Honesty, integrity, living within your means. Somewhere along the way, you lost sight of those. This isn't just about money, it's about who you're becoming. I want my daughter back. The real one, not the one who sees her father as a bank account. Melissa's face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw genuine remorse rather than just regret at being caught. I'm so sorry, Dad. I don't know how we got so far off track. It started with small things, a dinner we couldn't afford, a weekend trip on credit, and then it just spiraled. I knew it was wrong to ask you for money like that, especially right after your surgery. I knew Mom would be ashamed of me. I reached across the table and took her hand. Sarah would be disappointed in your choices, but she never stopped loving you. Neither have I. That's why I'm offering help, real help, not an enabler's bailout. Over the next few hours, Richard walked them through each document, explaining the terms and expectations in detail. By the end, both Melissa and Daniel had signed everything, committing to the rehabilitation plan. As they prepared to leave, Melissa hung back, letting Daniel go ahead to the car. When we were alone, she turned to me with red-rimmed eyes. "Why are you helping us at all?" she asked quietly. "After what we did, you would have every right to cut us off completely." I thought about her question carefully before answering. "Because family isn't disposable, Melissa. You made terrible choices, but you're still my daughter, Sarah's daughter. And somewhere inside, I believe you're still the person we raised you to be. I'm investing in that person, not in Cambridge real estate, but in the hope that my daughter will find her way back to her true self." She hugged me then, carefully mindful of my healing chest, and I felt something shift between us. Not forgiveness exactly, that would take time, but perhaps the beginning of a path toward it. In the months that followed, Melissa and Daniel stuck to the rehabilitation plan. It wasn't easy for them. Selling the Tesla was just the start. They moved from their luxury condo to a modest apartment, cut up credit cards, and lived on a strict budget. The financial counseling sessions were sometimes tense, revealing deeper issues in how they viewed money and status. For my part, I focused on healing, both physically and emotionally. My business continued to thrive under Frank's capable management, and eventually, I returned to work part-time. The heart surgery had given me a new perspective on what mattered. I began mentoring young contractors, sharing not just construction knowledge but life wisdom about building something sustainable in work and in family. A year after the confrontation, Melissa and Daniel invited me to dinner at their apartment. It was a simple meal, home-cooked rather than catered or restaurant-delivered, as would have been their style before. Their place was small but comfortable, decorated with creativity rather than expensive designer items. "We have something to show you," Melissa said after dinner, handing me a folder. Inside was a statement showing that they had paid off all their credit card debt and were making accelerated payments on the home equity loan. There was also a small but growing savings account. "We're debt-free except for the HELOC," Daniel explained, a new humility in his voice. "And we're on track to clear that within 2 years." "I'm proud of you both," I said, and meant it. "It takes courage to change course so dramatically." Melissa took my hand. "We've been talking a lot about Mom lately," she said. "About the values you both taught me. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what really matters. Keeping up with other people's expectations became more important than living with integrity." "Your mother would be proud of you right now," I told her, "not because you've paid off debt, but because you've reclaimed your values." Daniel cleared his throat. "Robert, there's something else we want to discuss with you." He glanced at Melissa, who nodded encouragingly. "We've been exploring the possibility of starting a small business together, nothing fancy or high risk. A home renovation consultation service, combining Melissa's marketing skills with what I've learned about real estate. We've put together a business plan, very conservative projections. We're not asking for money," he added quickly. "Just your advice if you're willing to give it." I looked between them, seeing something I hadn't in years, genuine passion rather than materialistic ambition. "I'd be happy to look at your plan," I said. "Starting small and building something real, that's how lasting success happens." As I drove home that night, I thought about Sarah and wished she could see the transformation in our daughter. The road to rebuilding trust would be long, but we'd taken the first steps. In trying to teach Melissa and Daniel a lesson about financial responsibility, I'd been reminded of something myself. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or investment properties. It's measured in relationships restored, in values reclaimed, in the quiet dignity of living honestly. Sarah had been right, as she so often was. Melissa did need me, even when she didn't know it. And perhaps I needed this challenge too, a reminder that sometimes the greatest act of love is not giving people what they want, but what they truly need. The surgery had fixed my heart in more ways than one. It had created an opportunity for truth, for healing deeper wounds than those left by the surgeon's knife. My daughter and her husband had ignored my calls after my surgery, but in the evening they had shown their true colors, and ultimately, that painful revelation had led us all back to what matters most. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.